Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for my rational perspective on Man United 0, Chelsea 0. 2020 just gets weirder and weirder because Chelsea have got back-to-back clean sheets under Frank Lampard. 2 0-0 draws. I don't think anyone could expect that even like 7 days ago after the Southampton game. Chelsea would be able to put in 2 resolute defensive performances, showing real sort of organisation, structure under Frank Lampard. I think there is going to be that frustration about Chelsea going for the game a bit more. In terms of Man United, I think their fear, I think both teams are very fearful. I think it was a low quality game, if I'm being true. I think there were some quality individual moments and performances that you can look at, especially from a defensive point for Chelsea once again. But in terms of the attacking play and the attacking talent on show, it was really poor in terms of the final third. And I think it was very cagey, even when both managers made sort of subs, and especially Solskjaer made attacking subs in the second half. It didn't really change the flow of the game. Everything seemed to break down, and very much the weather sort of encapsulated the mood of the game. It was not an expressive, fun, exciting game. It was a very cagey one, and that's why we got the 0-0 draw in the end. I think it's interesting that throughout the summer we were focusing on the exhilarating attacking signings we were bringing in, whether that was Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, but tonight it was the 2 defensive signings, actually the 3 defensive signings we made this summer that made all the difference and helped us keep that clean sheet. Ben Chilwell, I thought Ben, had a good solid game in defence once again, but I think you have to once again look at Thiago Silva, his best performance in a Chelsea shirt so far. He looks so comfortable in the middle of a back three. We'll get to a back three because that was a surprise. I did talk about it in my team selector yesterday. I wasn't stunned when I saw it. There was some confusion whether Reece James was actually playing in a central midfield three with Jorginho and Kante, but of course it turned out to be a 3-4-3. So the first time Frank Lampard implementing a 3-back system so far this season. I'm intrigued to see how that goes moving forward, or whether that was just a case of this is the opponent, we don't want to be done on transition like we were a lot of the time against Man United, because that's the threat of Marcus Rashford, and Man United made it pretty clear early on, especially before Pogba came on and Greenwood and Cavani, that they were looking to be a reactive side. Even if Solskjaer had moved from the 3-5-2 to the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-3-3 with Fernandes in there and Maguire coming back, it was still such a dull first half, really. But I think you have to give credit to, from a Chelsea perspective, I think Thiago Silva was absolutely brilliant, bringing everything we hoped he'd bring with that signing. Of course, all the fear about that signing was his age, coming to a new league at his age in his career and adapting to what is a very intense league. This wasn't an intense game, but for a defender of his experience, of his nous, of his intelligence, of his danger awareness, which we saw come to fruition very late on in that game, a massive block, which for me gave him man of the match from Edison Cavani, his former teammate at PSG. I think this was a game he absolutely excelled in, and I think he's bringing something that we just didn't have last season. Of course, we need to see this for a few more games, but I think now we've looked at Thiago Silva with Kurt Zouma and Dave and Chilwell in a back three or a back four, looking at that defensive configuration with those personnel in, with Mendy behind them against Crystal Palace, against Sevilla and against Man United, and Chelsea just look a lot more safe, a lot more certain, a lot more rigid. Very few times did we get done on transition. I think the midfield two of Jorginho and Kante didn't get overrun. Balance was the word. I think there still is that issue of Chelsea not getting the ball to their best attackers. Once again, that was a frustration. It was the same thing for both sides. I mean, maybe Man United, I think, edged it in terms of clear-cut chances, and both times Rashford being stopped by Edouard Mendy. The first save, I think both saves are brilliant. They really were. And they're the sort of things you hope Mendy will bring to Chelsea, bailing us out when Rashford's one-on-one. That's sort of the chance that I'm sure Man United would dream of and Rashford dreams of, and he loves scoring against Chelsea. He scored a goal like that against Chelsea at Old Trafford before, but it was really good. Actually, the first time you thought it was a bad miss by Rashford, but I actually think the second time you look at it, I think it was good movement by Mendy to really shut down the angle for Rashford there and stopping him finding the corner. It was a strong save. Of course, he did have that dodgy moment where he nearly scored an own goal at the end of the first half, but other than that, he was brilliant once again, just adding everything we lacked in that area last season. And right on the 90th minute, Marcus Rashford, a curler from outside the box. Solskjaer thought it had gone in. I think a lot of people thought it was heading for the goal, but a brilliant save, absolutely brilliant. And that didn't happen too many times last season for Chelsea, where our keeper would bail us out, and that's something you need in your team. I think my frustration is, once again, us being an expressive team, us playing to our attacking strengths. I think it's good to have two consistent performances. I think that's the thing I'll look at, right, is the sense that for back-to-back performances now, you can look at and go, that's consistency. I know it's frustrating we haven't scored. I know it's frustrating we don't look as fluid going forward. But if Lampard is starting to build that defensive base and structure with a consistent number of players back there, and then once we have that base ready, and once he figures out the attacking sort of part of the pitch in terms of who's going to play there, with Ziyech coming back into fitness, with Havertz, with Timo, with Pulisic now back fit, there's work, I have a little bit more, I think there's a lot more to do there, and I think you can have more hope there because there's individual quality, as we saw at brief moments today, of Christian Pulisic as well. So I'm not too sort of despondent about that. I think going to Old Trafford and getting a clean sheet, even with this current Man United team, I don't think is the worst result. I think both managers will look at it and go, we're early in the season. If you look at the rest of the Premier League at the moment, it's really erratic. Teams are still dropping points. We move away and we hope to improve in the next game. And Chelsea now, I don't want to see a 0-0 once again against Krasnodar on Wednesday and against Burnley. Again, now Chelsea need to use these confident performances in terms of defensive structure and rigidness, and then move on to the Krasnodar and Burnley game for an opportunity to be much more expressive, much more progressive in terms of our attacking play, which hopefully we'll do. Another player I just want to mention, I don't want to forget him because to some people, I'm sure he'll be man of the match, Reece James as well. Once again, following on from that brilliant defensive performance against Sevilla, he'd done it once again tonight, and I think there was a frustration in the first half just based on everyone's attacking in that game, Man United and Chelsea. Reece wasn't getting up the pitch enough to put balls into the box, but in the second half he got a lot more of that, and I think that balance we talk about so often, I think Reece had a perfect sort of nature to it. And I think him and Dave, we've seen this in the back three before, right? I think it gives Reece that comfort in that position that he can go up further and know there's a security of Dave behind him. We saw that at a moment where Reece pushed a little bit further forward, Rashford running on the left, and Dave made a brilliant block because Dave's an exceptional one-on-one defender. So I think that once again worked by that partnership. Whether that's going to be a consistent thing we see, I think based on the opposition, I don't think that sort of formation, I don't think is good enough for, say, next week against Burnley or next week against Krasnodar and moving forward, where Chelsea have games you expect them to win and expect them to take a foothold in the match. But for tonight, it worked. It's not going to be on the highlight reel. I'm sure neutrals were really disappointed by that game. It really was dull. I think it was very attritional. It was hard work. It was tense, which the other night was. But then you think about the chaotic and shambolic second half against Southampton last week and all the concerns and worries we had about sort of the long-term structure of Chelsea's defence this year. And if we don't improve that, how are we going to improve? I think after Sevilla and Man United, I think you have to give the team credit there because they haven't shown it for a long time under Frank Lampard, not consistently. And I think Frank should, and the players, and I think as fans, we should be happy with that, happy with Thiago Silva bedding in, happy with Zuma, Dave, a lot of players now playing regularly, Mendy being in goal. And I think that's good. And hopefully more of the expression that we did see against Southampton and in the previous games comes to the fore a bit more. Now we've got that structure. I think it's a good point, I have to be honest. It's not an amazing point. I'm not jumping off the walls for it because it would have been amazing to beat Man United tonight, get that first win at Old Trafford since 2013. The run goes on for another year. So yeah, those are my feelings on the game. It wasn't exhilarating, but we move on now to Krasnodar. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonofChelsea, and I'll see you again.